Today we're going to help you tackle back talk. When kids talk back to their parents, it can turn your home into a battleground. So today we summoned an expert to help you put a lid on it.
Yeah, Dr. John Duffy is a clinical psychologist, certified life coach, parenting expert, and parent himself of a teenage son. He wrote this book called The Available Parent, is a guide to help parents with the toughest job most of us will ever attempt.
Yeah.
And you know what makes it harder? When kids talk back.
Amen.
It's hard.
Absolutely.
And I've got a now 14-year-old, and I feel like when she talks back, she's setting an example for my two younger kids.
It's true, so which gives you even more urgency to try to curb that, and it draws us to that level of talking back. So all of a sudden we have this contest going between parent and child, and we want to do everything we can to circumvent that, because we're kind of modeling almost for the two younger kids, hey, you're going to get my attention, maybe not in the most positive way, but you're going to get it.
But you think that talking back is not only normal, but for the most part, a healthy part of development.
Yeah, this is the tough thing for parents to hear, so listen close. You're not going to love me for this, but as maddening as talking back is, it's really developmentally very appropriate.
Why?
Because this is part of growing up. You get agency over your world, and you start at home. So if you realize I can handle and manipulate and control this situation here, in part by talking back, in part by asserting myself, if I can do that, then I can handle the world at large. So if your child is talking back, you have a psychologist sitting here saying, hey, you're doing parenting right, you know? You're miserable, but you're doing parenting right.
I talked back one time, and I never talked back again, because when I did, I've told this story before, my mom rolled up a newspaper and she bopped me right on the head. And she said, never talk back to me. In a very quiet, stern, low voice. And I'm telling you, I never talked back again. She walked away after that moment, so it ended it right there. But I think it's fascinating, because you asked your daughter, why do you talk back? And I thought her answer was so interesting. What did she say?
She said, it's when I don't listen, or when her dad doesn't listen. So her perception is that we're not listening. And I think I'm listening all the time, and asking open-ended questions, and being agreeable and logical and rational.
Right. Well, but we act differently when things get tense, right? You know, child wants something, parent definitely doesn't want to give that for health or safety, or I just don't like that band, so I don't want you to see them kind of reasons. And we tend to join them in the intensity, and that becomes a real problem. So 99% of the time we might parent from a perfect place of calm. But if our kids know, I got your number at that 1%, they'll take that. They'll take that attention and run with it, man.
And they'll bring you down to their level.
Oh, yeah.
You can get snotty back real quick.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you're setting a bad example.
You are modeling something, right?
Yeah.
We are modeling something that is negative. And I want to address what you said, Tiffany, because I think a generation ago or less, I think it was, you know, that bop on the head would have done it. And we would have been done, you know, pushing back and talking back, because we realized, oh, mom or dad, they're mad at me. That doesn't work anymore. Our kids are savvy, and they're on to us, and they know if I hang in there, I can eventually manipulate my way through this situation. So they're willing to test us in a way that we were probably not willing to test our own parents.
Maybe they're just not as nice as I was as a kid.
That's what I was thinking.
Let's go with that.
Okay, but so here's the deal. You say it's a good thing, you're parenting well if your kids start talking back.
Yes.
Maybe it's because they feel you're not listening. Maybe whatever it is. But how do you get it to stop? Because at the end of the day, it's got to stop. There's got to be a parental figure that is in charge.
Right. You have to be clear about what it is you want to stop and what it is you want to continue, because we don't necessarily want all that assertiveness to stop. That is a really critical life skill, really important, that they're going to use outside the home. I worry about the teenager who isn't assertive, but it's the disrespect.
Yes.
In my opinion, that's what you want to stop. And you want to establish that at as early an age as you can. It's really tough to take a teenager who's been disrespectful for years and say, all right, new world order now. But if you take somebody who's 8 or 9 or 10 and say, this is how our house works, we treat each other with respect here, and you establish that precedent and you live by it, that's the tough one for parents, then you have a much better shot of circumventing the respect part while still holding on to that assertiveness part, which really is a very important part of moving on.
I think that's a great point, because I think that's what my mom did have right. I'll give her credit. It's one of those things you learn once you get older, what your parents did right, what they were right about. My mom, there was always respect, pure respect. I would never say I don't love you or I hate you to my mom. I never said those things.
Right.
So, but what specifically? How do you accomplish it? Because I feel like that's great in theory. Okay, you've got to do this and this, but what do you specifically say in those moments? What do you do?
Yeah, because they slam the door.
Yeah.
They walk away.
Right.
They roll their eyes, or they say, "I hate you," like you said, or "I don't want to live here," or "You're a horrible mother," or "You're mean," or
Absolutely.
Whatever.
Right.
Do you deal with it right then?
Right. My bias is no, and that's tough for parents because we kind of feel like you disrespected me just now, Missy. You get your butt right back here, and we're going to talk this thing through. When all the tempers are high, probably the worst time to work something through. So when she walks away, my bias is let her walk away, give her 10, 15, 20 minutes, then come back to it and talk about it in a really calm way, talk about what your expectations are, and even tougher, hear her out. When kids say, we want to be respected, we want to be heard out, they're telling the truth. In my experience, they're telling the truth. And the more we do that as parents, we listen to our kids, the more likely they are to feel like, okay, I'm not fighting an uphill battle. My parents do understand and get me. But if you try to do it at the height of the problem, not much happens when we're all keyed up, right?
Yes.
And we tend to escalate things.
I think it's such a great point
Take a
for
break.
parents. And I think the key here is, as a parent, if your kids talk back, it does not mean you're a bad parent. That's one of the biggest, most important things I'm taking from the
Feels
conversation today. And it feels good to know that it's normal and to know that it's not a sign that you're a bad parent. So I hope that helps people out there. Here's Dr. Duffy's website so you can get more information about the available parent or more information about him. It's drjohnduffy.com. Always a blast to see you. Thank you so much. And he has agreed to stick around, so when we come back, more on how to stop this. We'll be right back.
No more talk back.
Yeah, sass.
Oh, such a great conversation. We're so glad you can join us. Dr. John Duffy, clinical psychologist and parenting expert, is back with us now to talk more about that back talk.
I want to revisit something.
Stop.
Yeah, we were just the whole commercial break with everybody in the studio.
Right.
I want to come back to something that you said, because if kids walk away from a parent, and you said allow them to walk away, or if they slam the door, leave them in their room for a little bit.
I did.
I feel as the parent, if they turn around and walk away, that I have lost and they've won,
Right.
and I haven't asserted you should respect me as a parent.
Okay, so there's 2 points here. One is, I think we need to take a little bit of the win-lose out of this, because if you win, nobody really wins. If he or she wins, nobody really wins, right? It's a family collaborative effort. But I get the thought. I get that, okay, if this is a power struggle, I just lost it.
Right,
So
because it is a power struggle.
Yeah,
sometimes.
absolutely, of course.
Yeah, I mean, there are some people who will talk about teenage boys who get in fistfights with their fathers, things like that, where it escalates to that point.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I will assert that if you try to handle that in a heated moment, it might be worse for you. And that's part of the reason I think everybody go back to their corners and come back when you're reasonable. Ideally, you come up with the agreement of how an intense situation is going to go before the intense situation. So you sit down at the calm time and you say, sometimes you and I, we don't get along really well when you really want something from me and you don't handle that well, and maybe I don't handle that well. So here's what I propose we do, right? That we have a calm conversation. If it gets heated, maybe we both agree we'll go to our separate corners for 10 or 15 minutes and then come back to it. That takes the loser part out of it and gives you a little more control while still giving you that time to breathe and to regroup and think about, okay, so what do I really want to say? Because I want to say you're such a brat and I'm so sick of you. But that's probably not our best mode, right?
Right.
But so if you have a moment to think and you don't feel like you're losing, then it gives you an opportunity to come back and say, okay, what have we decided now? And I think that's a much more powerful point of view to come from than to just yell and scream, which feels good in just those few moments, but probably disintegrates the relationship over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I was trying to kind of put myself back in that teenage brain of what you're thinking when you're in those moments. And I remember thinking, because my mom always backed down. She always said, let me be. She always let me rest, whatnot. And I remember thinking in those moments as a teenager, she's really passive. oh, she's kind of weak in these moments. But you know what? And then I'd feel bad. And I'd feel bad that I made her feel that way. And we'd go out and we'd have a conversation, we'd hug, and it would be done. And now I think the way that we handle conflict, we don't have conflict between the two of us, but I think that you know, it's that win-lose that you can sort of get caught up. I don't know that, you know, that feeling that she had lost was something that was a bad thing in that situation. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
In the teenage mind.
Right.
I don't know if that means something or doesn't, but I was just trying to kind of put myself back in that moment.
Tiffany, it definitely does. I mean, you know, I think now we think of winning and losing is this battle, this argument, instead of thinking longer term. Like, you know, okay, my child has asserted herself maybe more appropriately than last time. I'm going to call that a parenting win. Instead of it needing to be, I need to win this battle with her, otherwise it's a slippery slope and I'm going to lose my car. You know, she's just going to drive off with it.
And watch, I thought she was like all sad, and when she goes around the corner, she's like, yes, she's asserting herself, you know? Like, that's what my mom probably did. No.
She probably didn't mind it though. If she was aware of it, she probably recognized, okay, good, that's probably the right way for you to go.
Real quick, what about taking away privileges like the car or the cell phone when they talk back? Good idea or no?
I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's reasonable to have a consequence for talking back, because I'm really very much against that. I think you have to be careful about levying too much of a consequence. Recently, I worked with a boy who talked back to his father, and his father said, all right, you're grounded for 3 months.
That's a long time.
He's a 14-year-old kid.
He doesn't even know what 3 months is.
He doesn't know what 3 months is. And so it just feels like, okay, I'm grounded for a lifetime. And so instead of complying, he thought, I'm just going to keep acting out because there's going to be another 3 months. So that kind of breaks bad on parents to have too heavy a punishment.
What's adequate? Because we're out of time. What would be an adequate time frame? A weekend?
Yeah.
2 weekends?
A weekend is great, and taking, you know, maybe a curfew away, taking the Xbox away, taking the phone away for a few days. That's a pretty strong pinch for a teenager these days, you know, and I think that suffices.
And quickly, when you know it's serious and you should see a doctor?
You know, if you feel like I have no connection with this child other than this kind of constant arguing and pushing back. If you feel like you have no legs with them whatsoever, I think it's really reasonable to use that tool at your disposal and seek out professional help.
Yeah, you can get skills and tips. It's really a great idea. So here's again Dr. John Duffy's information, drjohnduffy.com. He wrote The Available Parent. He's available on Facebook as well.